Have you seen Civil War yet?
No. Should I have seen Civil War?
No. I
Okay.
mean, cinematography is gorgeous. It looks they make it look like a 70s war movie. It was really
Oh,
impressive
it's right up here. I'm sorry. 70s war movie made in the modern era.
in the modern era, yeah. But the screenplay was not good.
What was it basically about?
Some reporters who there's a civil war going on, and there are reporters that want to get an interview with the president of America before the old America finally falls, and so they're just trying to get across a couple of states to the White House to get a final interview to get the truth.
You're just spoiling it for me. The truth is,
That's like the opening scene. They tell you like we got to go. We need the final interview
of the president.
And they risk their lives over and over and over. But you never learn what it motivates them, why they're doing anything they're doing. They step into danger over and over with no good reason. With all they need to do is, stay where they are and everything is fine and nobody dies. And yeah, it's like all the things that you're told not to do in the most basic of screenwriting books, they do. So yeah.
So it's trans, basically. Don't cut off your parts. Don't do just. And they're like, what? Huh?
Yeah, it was. The more I think about it, the more I think, man, that movie had no reason to exist. And it's because he tried to make it not political, where it was like the left fell out with the right, and made it into like nationalism, maybe, or localism versus nationalism, maybe, or something. But you run into guys that are just murderers, and you never figure out why. And you think maybe they're racist, but no, they're not, because they're picking off people not based on race. Maybe it's national. Anyway, it's just one of those things where you're like, man, there's some very talented people on the technical side of this movie.
Yeah.
And the storytelling was really something to be. I think what it is if everything falls apart and then say, well, the one thing that's going to stick around though is freedom of the press. That is what everything else rests on. We need to make a movie where the press are heroes for reporting.
Maybe they weren't around during COVID to know that's not how things go.
Well, it was. That's the whole time. I was like, none of this. I mean, I think a movie that tries to make the press heroes again, I can see why you'd be able to find money for that.
Oh, bro.
But I did. But it just and I go to a lot of movies. We have one of those Regal passes, so I go to a lot of movies.
I didn't know they still had those.
Oh yeah, it's the best thing. It's the best way to do it, I think. If you go to a lot of movies,
those movie pass. Yeah, I used to have one of those. Yeah, I used to go to a lot of movies.
That my kids have grown up enough that now they're doing all those re-releases, and my youngest loves it. We go see all these old movies together, and what I'm hoping is that a movie like The Mummy makes a bunch of money, even in a re-release 25 years later, and people are like, well, maybe we should make more movies like that. None of the movies we make now make money, but The Mummy, it's making money. It was packed. We went to see The Mummy, and it was almost full. Well,
Yes, some thoughts on that, but go ahead.
But I think what it was, I lost my train of thought.
You know what's really interesting? I'm noticing something just about you. How long has it been? 3 weeks since we had a show?
3 weeks, yeah.
And it's really been 3 weeks since we had it's funny. We're not really doing shows. We're doing conversations that you and I usually have on the phone.
Yeah.
And so it's like been 3 weeks since we really like talked. You know, like we've had some passing here and there, and so before I could even really even get started, you're already going. You're like, dude, you see Civil War? Civil War, it was horrible. You're already wired up. I was concerned because usually I'm like, okay, I got a show idea. I know what I want to talk about. I know what to hit you up about. And then you just kind of took it. You got a whole nother direction you're trying to get to today, which is really interesting. I'm almost tempted to ask you, like, what do you got on your mind? I should never do that, but but I'm here now.
It's just the you see like I think we're in a really interesting time with the election coming up and everything, and but just everybody in Hollywood is trying to figure out what to do because they're losing money hand over fist.
But they always have been, though, haven't they? That's not new.
It goes through cycles, right? So there's times when they make enormous amounts, and but like even Seinfeld said, the movie is no longer the king of entertainment the way it used to be, right? So it used to be that the king of all entertainment was the theatrical release in the movies, and it was that way for a long time.
Top of the show.
And he said it's just not that way anymore. They're having a hard time getting enough cinema quality releases from the studios, and some of that's their own fault, strikes and
okay. Can we just stop right there for a second?
Yeah.
Can we just want to drill down just on that for a minute? I think he was right. I think he is right about that. And yet I think that people are missing more than just the narrative of cinema content coming through theater. I think that's true, but I don't think that we have a lack of it necessarily. I think we're having more. The thing that's changed ultimately, this is something I was going to talk about with you. The thing that I think has changed ultimately is that this right here is cinema quality now.
Yes.
And this right here can be put on a platform that I can watch every day on this right here.
Right.
And so the ability for me to get that theatrical experience with the cinema quality, the writing, the acting, the entertainment, and I just want to put it in entertainment and not just the craft of making films, but the entertainment aspect of it, I can go and watch someone who's working every day to entertain me with cinema quality, and they have my attention far more than somebody who's doing it once every 2 years. And you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I love the brand. It's got to, so then it has to be, and this is funny because it has to be huge in order for me to really enjoy it and maintain that cinema level. The quality has to be above what I can get right here for a couple $1,000s. And, it has, and wow. And so this is something that George Lucas and what's the other? Spielberg and Scorsese were talking about 15, 20 years ago. They were talking about this, and did you ever read that article? I think I might have sent that to you a long time ago. It was like years ago. Just that the theater was going to you were going to see more and more $200 million movies.
Yeah.
Because there was going to be a bifurcation between cinema and television cinema and social media entertainment. And they were saying that you're going to have bigger movies in order to get people in theaters. And they're not going to come for the smaller movies because they're going to be just so common. You can get them anywhere because you're going to have more people making films and making movies. And so the ability to make a film became easier. And to get it out there to be seen became easier. And so now, and this is the same reason why um, what's his name? Oh, the guy who did. I see his face. There's other filmmakers out there who are making these rom-coms and love stories and for $20 million, but they couldn't get their by the time they get done to be $50 million, they couldn't get that money back going to a theater because nobody would come and watch those movies because action movies, when you can go out and you can make for $20 million, you can make John Wick.
Yeah. Or Everything Everywhere All at Once.
All at once, right? All of a
Yeah.
sudden, this is a different game and you're not a cinema film anymore. Right?
Right.
And so go ahead.
When you look through at like the history of independent film, the times that independent film took off were each time that the technology jumped.
Yep.
That the filmmaking technology jumped. But what has happened that's different this time is because in the 90s, the filmmaking technology suddenly got inexpensive enough and it was around enough that you could have something like Clerks.
Well, black cinema blew up too.
Yeah, black cinema in the 70s. I think black cinema again in the 90s, where you can make a movie for a lot of hard work and 30-40 grand, right? And then you get somebody that's good enough that does a good job at it, and the only release point is the theater still, though, right? The only distribution point, I guess. And so what you end up with is a perfect storm if you're in LA at the right time, if you're in Atlanta at the right time, right? Because you've suddenly all the equipment shows up, and if you've got the gumption that it takes to take that equipment and make a movie, and something like, and then like when you had the community colleges suddenly have that you could film, and then you could go down to the community college after everyone was done teaching, and you could you could edit, you could do sound, you could do everything in the back room in the community college. All of a sudden it was possible for people to make movies, and so you had an explosion of independent film.
Well, you got to add on to it. It wasn't you don't get Tyler Perry without bootlegs.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get bootlegs without VHS.
Yep. And so that was the next thing I was going to say is the VHS on the corner of New York was, I mean, it was like mixtapes, right? Everybody was out looking for the newest, hippest mixtape, the newest, hippest VHS. You build buzz and you build a reputation. What made it possible for the studios, because the studios were dying, I mean, on the vine, they just didn't have the money. But what made it possible was they still controlled all the distribution, and so they could sweep up all of those independents, into themselves. Streaming changed the game. Master P saw it. Tyler Perry, he took advantage.
I don't think they controlled distribution. I mean, in one sense, yes, but Tyler Perry, again, his whatever distribution he had to go through, Tyler Perry blew up only because of there was no control of the distribution.
Right, that's what I'm saying is when Tyler Perry and Master P came along, they said, actually, we don't need them to distribute anymore.
True, right? But I'm saying though that the way that people were hawking those, like, we weren't buying them, but nobody was buying.
but they were though too, because MC Hammer, he turned down his first couple of record labels because he said record deals because he said, I'm making more money than that selling these out of the trunk of my car.
Yeah,
or he was making so much money selling out of the trunk of his car that he could say, no, come back with a better deal. And they did, and he made a lot of money, and then he lost a lot of money. That's an amazing story.
I still think though, if people had to pay for Tyler Perry stuff and for Master P stuff, they wouldn't have blown up because people wouldn't have known who they were. Tyler Perry got so popular because everybody had a bootleg of his plays that he had to come out on his shows and say, guys, please stop bootlegging my stuff. Like, I'm working here, like, please just buy it for me. But what happened, there was another side of this where people were like, "Ooh, Tyler Perry's coming to town. Guess what?
Yeah,
I'm going to that event. I'm going to that spot." And then
yeah.
when he did his big movie, everybody I mean, it generated an audience for him and
His
even for
first
Master
movie
P.
was Medea, is that right?
No, I think his first movie was, he had a bunch of plays that he did Medea, but then he did, oh, what was it? It was kinda like that Jake's film. Um, I see her and I see the actor in my face. I can't call it. Go ahead. I'll figure out the
Okay.
oh, what was it? Diary of a Mad Black Woman. Medea was in that one, though.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's right.
Diary of a Mad Black Woman. Yep.
Because Medea was a side character, and then everybody was like, "I want more of her,"
Yes. Well, everybody
because that's a
well
funny character.
well, everybody the plays already highlighted Medea. So Diary of a Mad Black Woman was a play before it was the film.
Oh,
So it was already
I knew he had like a one man show for a while, and
he had a he had a bunch of plays running around. And he was smart. By the time I mean, yeah, Tyler Perry had bought his mansions from the play way before he ever got a feature. By the time Tyler Perry comes out with a film in 2005, he was already a millionaire just doing the plays. I
yeah,
mean, he was so Diary of a Mad Black Woman, that house that they show in Diary of a Mad Black Woman, that's Tyler Perry's house. He was
okay.
already wealthy by the time he
And
did that film.
then it becomes a write off, man. As soon as you film a movie,
Exactly. And
that's
that's what was so
brilliant.
crazy. So, like, that's what I mean. But Tyler Perry, he got wealthy off the VHS DVD world, like just
Yeah,
doing
right.
plays and and then he started writing. By the time Matrix 3 comes out, Tyler Perry is one of the people in Matrix 3. And I'm like, yo, Tyler Perry is anti the establishment. Anyway, so yeah, I interrupted you, but yeah, I just don't want people to forget that there was a massive underground push that cannot be stopped
Yeah,
in in media, and I think the industry is still trying to stop it. They can't though. It's over. They're
the
done to try and
the
stop that.
industry has always tried to stop the underground since they crucified Jesus. I
Wow.
mean,
Look at but you had a couple weeks off, but you ain't dusty making turns like that. What a segue.
well, because they so if you read anything before Jesus comes along, and it's all about who's at the top, who's got the power. That's where the influence is.
Yep.
Jesus flips the whole world on its head, and now the power is always comes from the underground because Jesus. That's where Jesus remade the world from, right?
And he's teasing it all. He's teasing it all out in the children of Israel. Like he's just teasing it all out. So, and this is why hospitality. I think we don't think enough about hospitality, but hospitality was one of the things that Israel was supposed to remain strong in because they were once slaves, and when they got free, nobody cared about them as a stranger sojourning through the land. And so when you get established where you were, that was one of the things God told me, make sure that you are very hospitable to the stranger
Right.
so that you can remember how God was kind to you when nobody else was, and you be like this to them, right? It's like, especially in that era, in that world, woo.
Well, and it's one of the things too because um, the establishment always ends up supporting fascism, where you use the government's coercive power
Mm.
to make it difficult on your competition. Right. That's the attraction of fascism by the establishment. What they don't realize is that actually it's destructive in the long run, even to the establishment. Right.
That's right. Just like in
But
the same way slavery is destructive to the slave owners too. That's
right,
right.
yeah. You don't you're not getting away with something that it turns out to be good for you in the long run. Uh, whereas the Christians and the capitalism that arose out of it that says, well, there's plenty of room. It starts with a belief that uh, faithfulness begets prosperity, right?
Mm.
serving your neighbor is what makes you prosperous too. Um, that and that's always that kind of love your neighbor um, as the foundation of capitalism has been uh, something distinctly Christian that says, well, actually, it'll raise everybody out of poverty if we serve one another, if there's space for us to work hard and make a living, and the exchange of goods for money isn't treated as a dirty thing, right?
Mm,
I add value to your life, and you give me money because I've added value to your life, and that money is how you uh, measure the value that I've added to your life in the economic exchange. Um, and it doesn't affect the ontological reality of our equality, anything like that, right? This is a service that all economics is service based economics. That's so when you have that sort of mentality, um, whole neighborhoods can come out of poverty
mhm.
without anyone being crushed, right? You'd never have to step on other people for a neighborhood to come out of poverty, for a city to come out of poverty. That it because everybody benefits. That there was a really uh, an amazing study I've read about it. A couple of different people did it, where they um, they gave everybody um, they started with everybody in the room got to pick out of this bin of things, or no, they passed it out. Here's this bin of things, and they said, what would you value this at? And they wrote it down, and then they said, now I want you to go around and trade for something that you would rather have. And everybody walks around the room and trades, and then now what would you value what you have at? And the total value that the total perceived value goes up of what's in the room. What's in the room doesn't change, but the perceived value does, because everybody has their particular desires now met, um, and through the bartering process. So you have two people that they look at what they've got and they say, oh, what I've got is worth about $5, but that thing's worth $10 to me. And the other person looks at what you've got and says, well, that's worth $10 to me. And so you exchange, and then you say, well, now what we've got is worth $20, right? um, it's a uh,
Mm,
it's an understanding of the world where uh human desires can be a good thing. I mean, obviously they can go wrong, but that you have and then the world is not a it's not a limited resources place that you have to compete in a way where if I win, other people have to lose, right? In that, and that mentality comes from a belief in the overflowing generosity of God, and the creator of this place is overflowing in his generosity. So all those sorts of things, when they come together, you can end up with more than you can end up with more than you started with. Everybody can end up with more than they started with, um, and it's such a different mentality than the fascism that you see now, that the communism that you see around. It all starts in that um, cosmological situation, but the communism and the fascism has been brewing in the underground for
mm,
70 years, well,
or
100 years
more.
now,
Yeah.
really, in America. But it was and the influence flows from there, right? The world has been built up in a certain way, or has been rebuilt in a certain way, that there are these places that um that are powerful in a generational sense, and we have focused on I mean, in the Christian film industry, you see this all the time. They're trying to get the next big blockbuster because they think movies are powerful. They like power. They think blockbusters are powerful. They like power, and so they try to buy a blockbuster. You throw enough money at it, and then that blockbuster is going to shift is going to give us the power to shift the culture the way we want. But that's all. I mean, the culture itself is just an abstraction, and so trying to affect the culture is, in and of itself, it's like, you're trying to move the zeitgeist. It's just a made up term to describe the general experience of a group of people at a particular place in a time. You can't. It's not a real thing. It's an abstraction. So there's that problem, and then on top of it, they say, we think that the steering wheel is over there, and but that what they're actually trying to do is get hold of the tire and move the tire itself.
Yeah.
Rather than actually going where the steering wheel is, which is in the underground service of your neighbor, right? It's in the particular place where you've got people serving their neighbor, and you have to leave the long-term results up to God. You never look at the people that end up having the largest impact are never the people that you would look at in the moment and say, that guy right there, he's going to have a huge impact, because he's overdoing something that you wouldn't, because he's over busy working on his craft, serving his neighbor, doing his thing. And then God says, oh, the ones that serve their neighbor well, they end up standing before kings. So he elevates, somebody up into a position of influence.
What's got under your cross? So you're mad at something. No, you ain't gonna lie to me. I know it. What do you really want to say, Jason? What's going on? No, you can just say it. I'm listening to you, but you saying something, you're being poetic. I don't want no poetry right now. You just gonna have to drop it straight out in front of me. And everybody else is like, what are you talking about, Knox? But I know I'm right. What do you want to really say, Jason?
I mean, I think it is I think what I would say is that you've got this really odd place in the conservative Christian world right now. And you have this like major, I don't know if I'd call it infighting or.
No, it's infighting.
Is it infighting?
Yeah.
But this you have this well, so there's this great story by John C. Wright. It was in Science Fiction and Fantasy magazine, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, called One Bright Star to Guide Them. And
I heard that.
It's a phenomenal short story. And actually I met him, and I got to be the one who adapted it for the stage, which is really cool. I don't think it ever sold anywhere, but it's out and about in the world. Anywhere where you can buy plays, it's out there. But he's got this image of sewer vampires, right? All these vampires that are down in the sewer, and whenever one of them starts to heal from their vampire desires and tries to climb out of the sewer, all the other vampires grab hold of them and bite them and pull them back down into the sewer, right? And it's a really powerful image because all of the vampires say they want out, but whenever anyone starts to get out, the other vampires you see that there's actually, that at the heart of it you've got this this competitiveness, this envy, that if he gets out, then we can't let anyone out, right? So
Yeah, we used to call that crab in a bucket mentality.
yeah, that same mentality. uh the the current kind of cosmological assumptions um have turned the church into that kind of mentality, right? Uh that you that everyone says, man, we would love for, someone to get out there in the culture and preach the gospel. That'd be amazing. And then somebody starts to do it and they're like, we should probably destroy them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure you remember uh back 20, 30 years ago, the church talking about how, oh, we need to really raise up artists and raise up the arts and honor that, and then anyone that tries to actually do it, everyone dogpiles on them. And he, the I've talked to a number of Christian filmmakers who are like, yeah, I don't mess with the Christian thing anymore. Right? They still go to church, they love the Lord, but they have to name they have to name all of their art not Christian, because otherwise the Christians come after them
Mm-hmm.
and just to try and destroy them, right? Um, and it's such a weird uh, time and a weird world. And then you see right in the middle of it, and this is what's driving me crazy. Right in the middle of it, you have these people that now are starting to say, you know what? You know what's destroying America? The Jews.
Mm.
Like, what is going on? You have this growing um racial rivalry, this growing uh everyone's looking for a
Economic rivalry.
economic rivalry. Everyone's looking for a scapegoat right now on why this dead body is rotting, right? But all of what's going on is you've got this dead body and it's starting to smell and it's rotting, and the United Methodist Church is the foot that just fell off. The you've got this and everybody's looking for a reason looking to blame the smell on something. And uh it's but you don't have um but living things don't rot, right? So I think it's been well. So here's the source of it all. I committed, I don't know, about 30 days ago to go on social media every day and post. Started a Substack, post every day, and just do that. And the problem is when you start going on social media regularly, you realize, oh my gosh, this place is the worst.
You
But
know, yeah.
the
Go ahead.
and the church and the but at the heart of it, you've got this rivalrous spirit that is looking to blame something, looking for the people to blame. Who can we blame? And but you're trying to blame them for the stench of your own dead body. That's what I see. And um, it, I'm frustrated.
So that's what's going on with you. You've been going on social media.
I have been going on social media.
I told you to do this 2 years ago.
I know you did. I know you did.
And so
So,
you let it stink even longer. You should have
but
just.
this is one of the reasons why. Um,
By the way,
is
before you go on, I just want to say this. Everybody argues and says, "Oh man, that's not the real world. Like social media is not the real world." And I think I've changed my mind on that. I think it is. I think it is. I think it's the world that we have never been able to live in before, which is the flow of thought. We've been able to wait for people to accumulate their thoughts through books, through um, sketchbooks, through just writing down ideas, and then we get it after it goes into an editor, and after it goes through a filter, and after it goes through somebody says, yeah, you can't talk like that in public. After it goes through all these places, and then we get it distilled down to this wonderful social media bourbon. Okay.
Right.
Or should I say cultural bourbon, a societal
Cultural
bourbon.
yeah.
Yeah. And now what we are in, which is I think is amazing. I'm starting to understand this. I think we're now in a place where no. You're tasting this stuff before it gets in the barrel. And society now is the new barrel that gives the distilled what do they call it before it goes into the barrel, but the distilled bourbon, right?
Yeah.
It gives it its flavor, the char. And we're now experiencing that in a way together that we never have before. And some of the problems that we're having is everybody's thinking this is the final version. I don't think it is. I think we're coming to where the maturation process is happening culturally, right? And I think that's kind of cool if you understand what's going on and then how to use it, right? But we are experiencing people's thoughts and where they are in real time. We're not waiting for them to mature anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. But the algorithm also rewards things that would not be rewarded with a group of guys in my garage smoking cigars talking. Right? That the guys would the other guys would be like, dude, you can't say that. Now you say to somebody, dude, you can't say that, and that rewards rewards them for saying it, right? So you've got, I think, I
don't think that's any different. You got the guys who have always been the same, who will say something just so they can get the other people to say something back to them.
That's true, but
that's not any different.
There was no way. Now though, you can build a career off of that trolling.
Isn't it amazing?
Before, if you want a society full of trolls, I mean, this is why I've been.
We already have it. We already have it.
I do think we do currently have a society.
Oh, this is trolls, so good.
But I think
good.
it's so.
I'd love to see you like this. This is great. You're so peeved right now. This is great.
I am, and the reason is that I don't think it's actually. I think it's the illusion of a free exchange of ideas because of the algorithm. Does that make sense? I think
yes.
It looks like, oh, we got this free exchange of ideas. You've got this conversation going on, right? But you actually there's a hidden algorithm that is rewarding, what would be destructive behavior in a normal scenario, right? So here's a good example, because I don't really use Instagram. I have, it's just, I'm a word guy, and it's a image thing, and so I just haven't really used Instagram.
Man, we gotta talk about Instagram, because it's not.
No, I would love to. I would love to know how to use it, but I look at it and I'm like, I don't know how to use that well. So
okay,
I've been trying to, I haven't even figured out how to. I started in Instagram because I've got a new show on Lore. The trailer just funded, and episode 2's up there ready to get funded, and I think episode 2's a lot better. It hasn't funded yet, but it might fund today. But it's way better because I got better at the use of the animation. Yeah. So but I started an Instagram, and
welcome to the cult.
Yeah, for that. Captain is up in my lap. because people are waking up and he's all excited.
Well, part of it is we just need the views, and anybody who puts a dog in their lap makes the views go up.
Yeah, right, Captain. This is Captain Steve Rogers of the 46th Infantry. That's his full name, because we got him right when we got him between Endgame and between those last two movies. So
when Marvel was still good.
Marvel's, yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited about the new Deadpool Wolverine movie. We'll see. Anyway,
that's how far we've fallen. Anyway, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Okay. So here's an example though. So Instagram, I don't really use it much, and I pop on there in order to do some posts recently, and I get here's some things that you would like. Now, what they know about me is not what I post or what I mean, they know who I follow, I guess, but it's a bunch of thirst trap women, right?
Yep.
Because of my age, and then a bunch of erectile dysfunction ads.
Interesting.
Right? That's what I get. And I'm like, well, when I don't use it, it reveals what the algorithm actually thinks of me.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that algorithm is built out of information from what guys my age are using Instagram for, or it is something that's built in the same sort of way that you have like you have the older view on things, like you would have the old, like, when streaming first started, you had all the shows that were like, hey, we're gonna have this rated R show, and between 30 and 90 seconds you're gonna have a naked woman on screen, right? And that's how it's a formula, right? So it's a formula in order to gather a certain kind of audience. So I don't know how the algorithm is built or what, but by not using it, and then jumping on there after a while, you realize, oh, here is what the algorithm
it has general
doing
markers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sure. And it's that way everywhere. Every algorithm is doing that. So the conversation is being manipulated by algorithms. And what we don't realize, because it's free, right? Because it's free to be on there. That means we're the one being sold, right? We are being sold to businesses. So, and that's not new. That's, free television was like that. That's always,
well, just let me answer that real quick. Let me, that has always been the case. Like you said, free television, but all forms of media, from radio to television to print to billboards, you always being sold.
So I'm not saying that that's automatically a problem, but I think we easily forget that the conversation is being directed the way that it is, the same way that a screenplay leads up to a commercial break.
But,
right?
But Jason, this is something that's like, I know why you're agitated, but I think I have an answer to why you're agitated more than, because I don't think what you said makes anything different than where we've already been. So if you're in Wall Street,
I think you're right.
If you're in Wall Street and you're a younger dude, or even, they're going to put billboards in places.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Like there's no difference in where, if you're listening to a radio station, the rock station, they're going to have certain things play on there. Hey, do you want to talk to a girl tonight? Like they're going to I remember those on the radio.
No, I'm not, I agree that this isn't new. This isn't different. I do think that we're dumber than we used to be as a culture. So that is true. So we're easier to manipulate. But I also think that,
that's a good one. Okay. That's good. That's good.
I also think that what that does within the church, is it rewards divisiveness, because arguments divisive arguments, trolling, that sort of thing. What is it keeps people on the site longer to be sold to more, right? So our divisiveness is being turned into a commodity on social media, and that frustrates me, um, because there's no way we would allow that. Uh, if in hey, we're going to have this debate in here at the church, and we're going to stop every um, 5 minutes for a commercial while we have this debate, theological debate, right? Um, because we wouldn't let our divisiveness be monetized. But you've got an algorithm that rewards divisiveness for monetization. I just look at that and I go, oh, this I don't want to be a part of that.
I don't
Now,
think
I don't think it's possible to not be a part of that. And
I think
I might be frustrated because I didn't start building a brand 10 years ago.
I think that's part
trying
of it.
to.
I think that's 15 to 20% of it, but I don't think that's it. Here, let me deal. Okay. Let me deal with you first. I think the problem with you on this is that you haven't unlocked it yet. That's what I think the problem is. And you keep trying to unlock it, and every time you go around to unlock it, you're like, yeah, that ain't it. And then you go around again, unlock it. Like, yeah, that ain't it. I think you haven't unlocked it yet. And I mean,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, but here's an example, right? So I've got my Substack, and I've got enough written that I could post every day for a year without having to write a new thing, right? It's just I've been consistently writing 1,000 to 5,000 words a day for a long time, right? So I've got this. I've got 15,000 words a week for 15 years probably, right? So I could publish and publish and publish and publish, and that's what I'm trying to do, just consistently get stuff out there. But I've got these things about, let me explain how the practice of Baptist how Baptist sacramental practice is related cosmologically or anthropologically to the transgender movement.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm like, well, and it's not that I don't want to have that conversation. It's that I want to have it in a constructive way. And I look around and think, I don't know if that's possible.
Well,
I mean, it would have been possible if maybe somebody would have said, hey, let's have the conversation.
Well,
right?
no, I think,
that's
not, I don't think that's fair, man. I don't think that's fair. We've been having that conversation for 2 years.
No, but is there a way to have it on social media?
Where do you think we are?
Oh, no, you're right. I give up. It's the world. It's the world we live in, and I'm bad at it. That's probably that's
what I mean. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you just haven't unlocked it yet, right? It's an unlock. There's you know what though? Everything that I'm talking about or that I'm engaging with, one way or another, either from the film side that I'm working on, the movie side, the entertainment side, the social media side of like Dome Creative Agency stuff that I'm doing now, or across politic, everything that you and I are talking about, I'm applying it either in Christian worldview application or direct application to the situation where I'm working with artists, or I'm working with a talent, or I'm working inside the industry. So I'm immediately engaging those things directly with the rhetoric that I've learned as we've been talking over the few years. Right. My theological positions, I've had those when we started talking. How I applied those since we've been talking has changed radically, especially understanding literature, rhetoric. Like, I think our rhetoric and poetry. So a lot of people understand rhetoric, but then because they're so poetically malnutritioned, they don't know how to really have a conversation anymore with people. So they have good rhetoric, but they use rhetoric because they enjoy the fighting, because they know they get more attention from it, which has been going on even before we had the social media stuff, right? Christians are just bad at poetry. period. Right? We don't know how to make what we have inviting. Right?
Yes.
And so that's the challenge that we've had. And I remember you said this to me. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, but you said this to me. Why am I preaching to you your own words? This is really weird. You said every time that I get a text message or somebody writes me, I've decided to use those moments of ways of sharpening my skills of communication poetically to that person. I was like, wow, I get opportunities every day to become better at a craft or a skill that I don't have, or that I'm trying to develop, or that I'm getting. And I was like, oh, how do I do that? So I started doing that, and not just with writing, but with everything. Right? It's like, okay, I'm talking every day. How do I talk better? Let me develop some more words for my vocabulary. How do I do this? What does that look like? And so I found that now my tools are sharpened in a way to be able to use an engagement. So I want to go back to what you were talking about with the algorithm, with incentivizing the divisiveness.
Yeah.
We've had this conversation a little bit before, so I don't agree with you.
I know.
What the algorithm, I think so first, there is always a base. There's always a base that anybody who works on anything that's going to market and try and promote anything, whatever it is, there's always a base person. I don't think the things that are the base are wrong. So if you look at an average man, let's just say a Christian man or whatever, but you look at an average man in his, let's just go 18 to 25. What are they doing? Yeah, we know what they're doing.
Yeah, right.
Right. So then if you know that, then the things that you want to get in front of them are very clear.
Yeah.
Right. If you realize that large majority of men's time is spent on OnlyFans pages and you're a girl, then what kind of industry do you decide to get into if you want to make, $100,000 a month?
Right.
Right. So there's a base based on reality that I think is telling us a lot more about mankind and humanity than the actual thing itself. So there's a steering process that people are trying to do. It's like, well, no, you're cutting off the wrong end. Like, it's not here, it's back there. There's we need, and this is stuff we and you have talked about. If we want to see OnlyFans disappear, that's not hard. We need to take away the desires that men have for filth and teach them how to enjoy that with value. This is the value of what you get. That you see OnlyFans go away, right? You see, and then you get a different base of what are men looking for. It's funny. Your dogs give you a business. When you have work, and my wife was gone out of town for a whole week. Her father passed away, and I was left with 7 kids, 2 jobs going on. It was insane. And I had no time for anything else in my life.
Right.
Nothing else in my life. Right. You know what I mean? Like, run and take a shower. Barely. I got a 3-year-old I got to take care of. Right. And so my life was so full of work that by the time 10:30 came, I'm gone. I am in sleep. And if you're a young man and you're not working that hard at something, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Right. And so there's just like, anyway, all I have to say is, so there's a base that that everybody is taking. They're reading the culture and they're saying, this is our base man. Churches are doing it when they're looking to move into church planting. What's the environment? What's the base here? What are the problems? So everybody's taking a pulse. So if you're whatever you are, whoever you are, you want to market or advertise, you're reading that base. What happens with the algorithm is not being unfair to try and market and say, well, here's the base. Let's put these things in front of them. It rewards good content far more than it rewards bad content. Far more. We get a lot of bad content in our, it's not even bad content. We see a lot of arguing about things, but whatever that is, the other side is gazillion times more. So you think about Tucker Carlson coming out here, just amazing, just blowing up, right? He didn't maintain that same amount of views long term. He hit really hard and then he kind of leveled out. And that's okay. You look at somebody like Mr. Beast and people that are in that flow, they have way more consistent views and engagement off 20 minutes than anybody else. And there's
Yeah.
a bunch of them out there. And so the problem with people who are angry and want to fight and debate, eventually that comes to an end. And so the algorithm knows that. It knows it's going to come to an end. And so it hits it for a minute and then it wants to get rid of it because it knows that people, they can't live that way consistently. Eventually somebody's going to get mad and they're not going to, they want you on their app. So then they, you know this. So, but
Yeah.
the other good content, they will feed you that constantly. And I think I send you a lot more good memes or fun content than I send you like, what just happened here?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, I know like on Instagram, I go on and I search like Steph Curry dimes once, and then I search puppies and butterflies. That's one of my favorite searches because then it shifts everything, and so then all of my recommendations become dog videos and stuff.
Well,
right?
and
if I don't do that consistently, I'm not. I have to be actively training the algorithm to me, and so I know some of it is just my inactivity.
Well,
but,
it's not just that too. That's part of it, but sometimes we don't think of these as servants who are trying to serve us well, and that we're just doing a horrible job of being a good coach to them, right? Like that's that's kind of the sucky part. Is like you want to know
how. I told you I've been training an AI. Did I tell you I've been training an AI?
I've been trying to get you to train an AI.
Yeah. Well, you were the one that talked me into it. I thought I told you that I finally.
No.
Yeah.
Good.
I need to train one as an office assistant, but I've been training one for artistic stuff.
It's the best,
and it's amazing. But it's a tool that if you can't make art, you can't make art with AI.
Jason,
you know what I mean?
This is what I think is happening. Okay. Oh my goodness. I hope I can explain this well. We're at a place in time where not just the earth, the gardening, the environment is telling on us. The waves in the air are telling on our ability to take dominion.
Right.
So like if you have a crop, if you have a garden and somebody comes over, it's really obvious of whether or not you've been out there working in it or not. Right. And so, but you can't always see that inside of a home or a family as clearly.
Yeah.
Social media and the way that people are engaging is telling on folks immediately. Like it's telling on, okay, here goes.
The feedback loop is much shorter.
Way shorter. And here's what's crazy. This is the part, man, it's so funny. How did you know I want to talk about this today? I realized that I have not uprooted all the dispensational tendencies out of my own mind and heart yet, because a dispensational mindset and worldview that I have has more of the James Cameron, the machines are going to take over, doom and gloom, rapture eventually, but we're going to have this huge collapse in society. And so, and I'm not saying that we can't, because judgment can come, but there's a different way that it takes place. But I've had a dispensational where I'm waiting for all of this stuff to crash so that everything gets worse. And then, so I got that's going on in my head. Even though it's not at the forefront, it's just a process that I'm still living. That's my cosmology, and it's working out.
Yeah.
And so I haven't practically switched my cosmology to like, so what good is going to come from this? And how do I use this good? Because it's not going away. For whatever reason, in my head, in the dispensational aspect of it, I'm waiting for all the power is going to die out, all of the electricity is going to go away, and we're going to be in some apocalyptic kind of world really soon. And we're not going to have social media. And because we're not going to have social media, people ain't going to know how to get food because they can't hunt. There's going to be no DoorDash. And I'm just waiting for that apocalyptic moment where that's it, right? It's zombie apocalypse. It's D-Day, right? And for whatever reason, that has stopped me from fully engaging in the current world where we're at. I'm still waiting for something to crash. And because of that, it limits me from embracing everything that we currently have and using it to its fullest. And I realize that about myself. And I'm like, oh, I got to stop that, because everybody else who's using this properly is getting, if you look at what the other guys are doing, remember, everybody says, oh man, I wish I was on top of it when Facebook came out. Oh, I wish I was on top of it when Twitter and X came out and social media came out and YouTube came out. Man, nobody saw it coming. And here it was. And everybody's like poo-pooing on it like 15 years ago. Now, after COVID, they realized they didn't have a place to talk if they didn't exist. But y'all was the ones who didn't want to be on it 15 years ago. And I remember telling Todd Friel and Wretched, y'all better be on this. You can't monetize it. It's like, we'll figure it out, but you better be on this. Here we are, this other turn now with AI. And you're watching all the guys invest $72 billion or $70 billion, $72 million, $150 million into all these new AI generated farms. And everybody's like, yeah, we ain't touching the AI. It's like, and so what they're waiting for is the same thing that they were waiting for with TikTok. When is the government going to come in and put regulations on this,
right,
so that we can survive? Because otherwise we're going to have this apocalyptic moment. I'm like, yo, bro, we are not thinking. I think we got our dispensationalism mixed inside of our post mill, where it's where the dispensationalism is awaiting, and we're not saying it publicly, but we're awaiting a crash. We're looking for a crash. We're expecting a crash. I think that's different from saying, man, if we don't use God's stuff properly, we're going to get judged. There's a different reality there where we just think naturally there's going to be a crash in it because we are using it. And I'm like, no. You don't use God's stuff properly, and that's the thing that gets you in trouble. And when Christians aren't engaging in the stuff to show people how to use it well, then that's the problem for me, right? Like we have to be. Nobody really knows yet how to think and really use AI well, right? And I'm like, ooh, if we can get the last little bits of dispensationalism off of us. And it's going to be funny because I don't think it's going to be a post-mill person who really figures it out. I think it's going to be a dispensational, charismatic dude who's speaking in tongues, who's like, guess what we didn't deal with the AI? You know, it's always going to be them because they're thinking, it's so weird. They're schizophrenic, but they really do like try and live in the moment in a lot of ways, right? They're touching earth in ways that a lot of people ethereally think they are.
Yeah.
But something about that is, does that make sense? Kind of, a switch flipped for me where I'm like, oh my goodness, I am still connected to a dispensational cosmology, a Baptistic dispensational cosmology.
I think it's if the world and if culture is a mechanism, then you can stick a spoke, or you can stick a stick in the spokes and stop it, right? You can pull out a gear and the thing stops working. If it's
interesting,
a organism, organisms can adjust to their environment. And so if reality is an organism, I mean, if the universe or the created world functions more like an organism, metaphorically, then it'll adjust to its environment and grow and change.
You just don't like the new world, Jason. Just tell the truth. You just don't like the new world.
Here's what it is like last week I reread Oedipus Rex, Sophocles, one of the greatest writers the world has ever given us, right?
AI, who is Sophocles? See, that's the kind of world I'm living in.
I know. But and it's there's so much wisdom, and there's a reason that's been around forever, and that people know Oedipus even if they've never read it, they've
Right.
heard of Oedipal, they've heard, you're right. So and the and so thinking about it, and then you go to social media, and you think, so the Oedipus Rex is about the resistance to a mechanistic deity, a deity that's not good. Um, it's not good. It's not good or bad. It's just fate is set for you, and you can't avoid it. And how that's that the proper response to that is to um, is to despair, unless there's something above and greater than it. Then the proper response would be piety. But that's the question that Oedipus Rex is wrestling with: is there something above fate or not, right? And if there is, because you get some, like Virgil, his whole thing is there is something above fate, and so the proper response is piety, and it's all about encouraging piety because there's something above fate. But Oedipus Rex is because fate is a mechanistic understanding, and most people live in a world where, if you dig down deep enough, they actually believe that there is a basic, that fate and a mechanistic universe
It's what
is the
Arminians think
reality that they
Calvinism
live in.
is.
Right? Yeah. Well, and that's the the it, I would say that there are Calvinists that actually do hold to that. People that call themselves Calvinists that actually hold to, because they have replanted Calvinism in a mechanistic understanding, they actually are arguing for some sort of fatedness,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the Calvinism grew up in the middle of a combination of post-Florentine humanism uh, and English humanism, right? You've got a bunch of different. It grew up in a different cosmology than what most Calvinists hold to right now, right? It, it grew up in a cosmology in which the deconnectedness of the generations that we assume, right, where, well, my kid's got to grow up, and we'll find out his fate together. We'll we'll see if he's elect or not. Who knows? That's mentality is just that is the evidence of a fundamentally different cosmology. That it's a fundamentally different view of what kind of place we live in,
Mm-hmm.
um, that you could even imagine in a generational deconnectedness, right? Whereas you've got Proverbs 31 with a mom that says, "Son of my womb, listen to me." Right? You came out of my womb, and so you have to listen to me. I have authority in your life, and I am fundamentally a source of wisdom to you. And you know how we know that? Because you came out of my womb, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the authority of a mom to wisely guide. And this is something that my wife pointed out to me. But reading the passage, she's like, everybody wants to make this about you know wives. Hey, find a good wife, and they forget that this is a mom talking to her son. This is that you start finding a wise wife by having a wise mom, right? So and a mom who's comfortable wielding her authority wisely in her children's lives. um but the idea that you could have that you would wait and see um what this child is going to choose uh before you exercise some sort of uh but before you include them into your religion, um is so unheard of. But when you have a mechanistic, fatalistic view of the world, which the mechanistic understanding of cosmology is always fatalistic. There's existentialist attempts to dislodge our own self from the mechanism in order to retain free will. And a lot of American Baptist theology is really existentialist philosophy, not fundamentally Christian.
Can you work that out for me? Because you just
Yeah.
laid that out like in a box, but I need you to unpack it.
So, um, so a mechanistic understanding of the world is that cause and effect is an is inescapable, and that our will as a created being is a part of some sort of simple cause and effect system. So Oedipus Rex, I think, one of the greatest literary achievements of mankind, is Sophocles wrestling with the fact that if the gods are just the biggest fish in the pond and we're the same kind of being, right? They're just more powerful. Then we're stuck at their will is stronger than our will, and so no matter what we do, our will is going to be bent into what they want for us, right? Because they are it's the equivalent of, like, if you've got a pool table and you've got a bunch of pool balls, um, if you also put a bowling ball on the table and you push the bowling ball around, that bowling ball is going to impose its will on
On the
all of
rest of the balls.
the rest of the balls because they're smaller, right?
This is
It's
a Man in Black cosmology, isn't it?
it is, yeah. It's a weight. It's different weighted wills, but they're all the same sort of thing. And if that's the case, then when the gods decide something, it's inescapable, because your will. So even if you are opposed to it, your will is never going to be strong enough to oppose the will of the gods, and they're just a stronger version of you, or you're a weaker version of them. They're the same kind of being, same kind of thing. So, and in that setting, um, coercive power is the uh, is the is the engine of everything, right? So you see this a lot with the current nationalism debate, where you've got a bunch of people saying, well, the issue is that we don't have somebody with the authority to make everybody do what we want them to do, right? And we could put America right if we just had a governor or a president with the guts to tell everybody what to do. This idea that a Christian prince is going to be able to put a society right. The and I'm somebody that wants a Christian prince, so I don't think that's the issue at all. But there's a
Logistical problem here.
Yeah, there's I think a cosmological disagreement,
Yeah, yeah.
about some things. So you've got, but in that setting, if you try to drop Calvinism into an understanding of uh, the difference, that everything is the same kind of thing, and what makes a difference one way or the other is power, then what you get is a Sophoclean scenario where some people get saved against their will and some people end up going to hell, but it's the fate, it's a fate type of thing that sends them there. It's a simple divine will, cause and effect, um type of thing, where it's not there isn't uh, a human it's not so you don't have the restorative, um spiritual where Christianity is a spiritual restorative of the humanity of people that get
Mm,
saved, right? So,
mm,
um, so you think of something like, debates about inspiration, where when somebody comes along and says, "Well, the book of Romans is written by a man," and everybody freaks out. No, 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 no. It's written by God. Yeah, this is not. It's God. It's inspired by God. It's God breathed. It's infallible. Right? All of those things. And so you can't come along and say it's written by a man, except for it is. It's written by Paul, right? So, um, but we know that, but we can't. But in a mechanistic cosmos, it's a question of which will was more powerful in the situation, which was the bowling ball, and which was, which. But um, in a historic Christian cosmology, historic Christian metaphysic, God's will is a different sort of thing altogether. Right. So it's not his will isn't his will is upholding the billiard table. It's not on the table in the same sort of way. It's not right. And then the ball is freed to make its own free choices in that within the bounds of God's will, and he has freely ordained whatsoever comes to pass, um, including the free choices of mankind. Right. So you have, but in that mechanistic system, what's happened every single time is you end up with there's an unlivability to mechanism to a mechanistic cosmology, right? You can't survive in it, you can't live in it. You get serial killers are that have bought completely in, um guys like Mao, right? It would be a good example, of somebody who says, um, well, it's a power game, and we're all cogs in this giant machine, this giant mechanism, and some of these cogs won't do their part, and so we've got to remove them from the system because the system can't function with these cogs doing their own thing, right? So that mechanistic understanding underlies communism, but it underlies the mass murderers' justification for removing cogs from the system because they won't join the machine and be a part of it the way they're supposed to. And so you've got to get rid of them, because free radical in a mechanistic, system is what causes cancer, right? A free radical is a threat to the system. But what's always grown up in those systems as well is, the existential view of mankind, an existential anthropology, and what existentialism says is, by an act of the will, in spite of everything being a mechanism, by an internal act of the will, a decision that I make, an internal act of the will, I can decide to um, to be internally separate from the system, or internally, I can my act of the will can become a new center point for meaning, um, in a meaningless universe,
oh, I
right?
do
So
not like what you just did. If anybody's following, that just got really uncomfortable because that's been a huge part of Baptistic Christianity, and not just Baptistic Christianity, but I think Christianity. Period. I think it's permeated all of Christianity.
yes, right. All of American Christianity for sure. You've got this where so because you've got this system that and every time we try to attach to the system and get meaning out of it, it fails us, right? So, um, right now, America has failed now multiple generations to provide a meaning to life, right? So you used to be able to be proud to be an American, and but nationalism has failed again. If and again and again and again, then you had um, you had the localism, the neighborhoods. You have somebody like um, I think Easy E is a good example of a guy who said, my neighborhood, if I can rule my neighborhood, I will have all the meaning that I need in life." And then he died of AIDS, right? So you've got the where you think, well, if we can shrink down the space to something
Then we
manageable,
can
maybe
get power.
then, yeah, we'll be able to get enough power to be able to add meaning, add meaning to my life, or escape the meaninglessness of the void of existence. That sort of wrestling always has been going on with that mechanistic view of things. So this was at the base of all of Freud's uh, research and philosophizing. It was at the base of the of Karl Marx, and his movement, um, where you could make a Gnostic decision to be socialist man, as he called it, right? That you could by will, um, and by knowledge, you could become socialist man, which elevated you above the mechanism of reality into a new mechanism of humanity that was being built out of that would be built from the collapse of capitalism, right?
But everybody's got a born again system, don't they?
Everybody does, right? You have and it's either going to be Gnostic or it's going to be historical, and so Marx offered a social born againism. And then the social gospel got all excited about it in the church. Then you had Freud offer a psychological born againism, and the liberal movement in the main lines got really excited about it, and they bought in. Right. So, and then the church growth movement said sociological research can give us secret access to the felt needs of a culture, of a society, which is back to that. I mean, culture is not a real thing, but sociology gives the illusion of the reification. It gives the illusion that it's a real, that culture is a real thing, and so you've got this sociological born againism that is really a return to liberalism, but under a different framework, right? The church growth movement was just refried early 20th century Christian liberalism. So it's not a surprise that it went the way it went, because
that's the Bill Hybels and those guys.
Yeah, exactly, right? We've seen that story before. Like, why isn't your church growing? Well, it's because your parking lot's too small. If you were to expand your parking lot, it would cause all of these people in the neighborhood to say, whoa, they must be really growing. I want to be a part of that. And then you preach on things that are the felt needs of your community. What do they care about? Well, they're worried about money. Well, we'll do a series on money. Oh, they're worried, right? It's a mechanistic understanding of people that uses psychological manipulation, because they're just a machine, and you can control or
you can
guide and direct them.
You can upload a new program and there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the Matrix.
And then what happens is the response is existentialism. So you have even this is a really good example, because what came out of it was the thing that Mark Driscoll was a part of it early on, and the basically the youth groups from that movement started a new movement. So you have this movement that says, hey, we're not your grandmother's church growth movement. And then all of the youth groups are like, hey, we're not your parents' church. And they start the new movement.
We're young, we're restless,
Right.
but we're reformed.
Right. Yeah. So you have the young, restless, and reformed come out of that. And you had, what was the evangelical version of that same movement? I can't think of what it was called. But that
Not
whole
the emergent movement.
yeah, the emergent movement, right?
Yeah.
The emergent movement
They are
was
parallel to that. That's true. The
post
young,
it was
yeah, you're right.
postmodern, it was existential, where, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give you an experience, but it's an experience that that is more of an existential experience that recenters meaning, the system of meaning around your will, your experience, your choices, right? And that that act of the will as a way of as a anchor to meaning. I am who I am, right? Because of this choice. This choice is the thing that makes me who I am. That existential uh, that existential approach to things um, is an attempt to remove your mind or your will from the mechanistic system, right? Because you can't control the mechanistic system. So I can remove my heart from it. I can remove my mind from it. I can remove my will from it, right? And you have this all the way back to this, you have the Stoics and the ancient Greeks, the Cynics, the different groups that have been saying this all along. And then French existentialism, Sartre, Camus, um, Nietzsche, who is vaguely in that category, right? So you've got, and then the American church buys into the mechanistic cosmology, and then turns um, turns the turns conversion into more of an existentialist act of the will. You know, I the worst I've ever heard of this was a guy that was preaching that said, "Hey, God made his vote, the devil made his vote, and your vote is the tiebreaker. Who are you gonna be, right? Who are you gonna be, right? Are you gonna choose to be a follower of Jesus, and that choice then becomes the new center of your identity?" And the problem is then you have to continue, make the choice over and over and over, and it rests on you, and there's all of those problems. But behind the thing that makes that seem like a legitimate, the thing that gives you the gut reaction that that's something that's not nonsensical, something that makes sense, is the mechanistic cosmology. That so you know, covenantal cosmology, you receive your identity from the you receive your identity from the family you're born into. You receive your identity from the religion you're born into. You receive your identity from the nation, or the city, or the nation state, or the tribe, whatever civic structure you're born under. You receive your identity, and it's not something.
Go ahead.
Right. So
It's so far from that. That's so no. I get to choose my identity. Like it's so funny because that's exactly what we're pushing against inside the trans movement, which is, no, sir, I know you think I have a penis, but that's not my identity.
Right.
And
that's just part of the mechanism.
Hold on. Are you saying then that, because this is really interesting. So are you saying then that identity transcends a lot more than we think? So your identity is marked out for you. Now you can, but there is a change in identity, right? Because if you're born into a house that's not a Christian home, and then you become a Christian, your identity really does transform. Can you say that? But there's something that happens different because you're no longer that identity. Uh-oh. What did I just do?
Well, you're born again.
Ah, okay, that was really stupid.
No, but
That was really
think of what
stupid.
we've changed born again into.
Right, right. That's so true. Okay, I get it. No, that was you were waiting for that one. Did you know that was coming? That was so funny. I wish anybody who's listening to the podcast, they had to go watch the video just see Jason's face. He's sitting there like he's like, "Oh, this is such a good one." It was so juicy, and I just put it up for you. That's so good. Okay, I got.
But think about it. We have
Mm,
turned born again into a Gnostic moment, right? So
interesting.
it
Interesting.
it, it is such a it's it's such a wildly um oh it I would say this part goes so deep. R- Um but it also goes it goes all the way up because this is like the astronomy stuff that we've been talking about. This is the same conversation, right? That what kind of world you believe you live in when you look up into the sky, what you think you see. Because we don't see anything, we our eyes don't actually see anything different than the ancients, but our imagination places a completely different um thing onto it. uh we I mean we honestly when we look at the sky, we don't even see it from our own perspective,
No,
um
no.
right, because of how our cosmology is so um de-individualized. It's so mechanistic that that when we look up into the sky, we actually can't even see from our own perspective, right? Our imagination shifts into a different position and place about all of it. Um, so the and we we look up and we don't see beings engaged in the liturgical movements of that love motivates, right? Love motivated liturgical dance, um, that the stars are actually going through, right? They love, so because we say, well, what causes them to move? Well, it's
Gravitational pulls. Yeah,
gravitational
exactly.
pull, right?
Yeah, yeah.
A mindless coercive force is what we enacted upon the stars, whether they wanted or not, right? And
So
then
we don't think of
and
the moon.
then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
read the Bible and we say, "You will be like the stars in the sky,"
Right.
and we become and and the and you've got Calvinists that say exactly, we are mindless. We a coercive force has acted upon us, and so we have enter into the liturgy whether we want to or not.
So
Um,
then the moon and the ocean, they're not. It's just gravitational pull. They're not dancing.
right, and and um, it's this is where that I when you see that people have reified a metaphor system in their language to the point where in their imagination there aren't other options, right? There aren't multiple things going on, right? So the the ocean and the tides as a um as a liturgical dance between the moon and the ocean, who are both worshiping the Lord, raising their hands and clapping them and that sort of thing.
Mm, mm.
um it doesn't undo uh the math, I would say, right? You can still do math that, so do you know when the tides are going to come in, how high they're going to go, all that.
Yeah, the rhythm
You
is still there. The beat is still
the
going on, and
the
you're just
rhythm and the beat is still there. It's just the you get to actually hear the music that goes along with it. Um and you get to hear it as music or realize that it is music. And I think, but we have taken the mechanistic metaphor system and acted like it is true. It's the one that's true in a fundamental sense, and everything else is added on to it. So when you say something like, my mind works like a computer, and then you would take that metaphor system and then say my mind is a computer. um a computer takes in information and sorts it, and then you say my mind is a computer, and then the next thing you say, that not in a metaphorical sense, right? In a literal sense, you start saying, well, my mind is actually just a computer. You have actually moved the anthropology. That's a different anthropology altogether. So rather than the will of man, as the dominion, authoritative dominion holder over the world, forming silicon and electrical and gold and plastic and bronze and copper into the image of the one who's taking dominion over it, where the computer is in some vague ways it's an extension of the mind of man and a reflection of it.
Argue against yourself, Jason. Argue against yourself. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I think that the what we've done is we've actually moved the metaphor in the other direction, right? So and metaphors don't work that. I mean, there are some metaphors that work both directions, but the metaphor, it doesn't work that way. When you say what is the referent of the metaphor and what is the analogy, right? What's the analogous?
Yeah. What is it anchored in?
We have flipped it and switched it around.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah, I agree. No, I'm just saying that. Go ahead. I want you to finish.
But what it does is you end up having to either settle into that and no longer believe in your selfhood, which is why Buddhism is growing in popularity, because Buddhism has this mechanistic cosmology already, right? So it feels comfortable to people. So you can either go the Buddhist route, or you can go the dislodged route, right, where you live dislodged from reality, or you by an act of the will you dislodge yourself from reality, or you are dislodged from reality and by an act of the will you recenter reality in your own choice. You recenter your meaning system, your meaning, your understanding of yourself. You recenter everything in your own act of the will, in your own
decision,
free will, your decision.
Yeah.
And so you get so this is why so much Arminianism, Calvinism debate gets nowhere, because they agree on the cosmology.
Yeah, they agree on this cosmology, right?
And so then it's like, well, you're a fatalist. Well, you're a decisionist. And they go back and forth. And rather than saying, well, let's talk about metaphysics a little bit. What is the will? What kind of creature is enacting a will? What kind of world are we enacting our will in? Is the will an illusion, or is it real? Right? All of those questions. Because I've heard people that call themselves Calvinists say that free will is an illusion.
Yeah,
with the full straight face. And you think, well, you're not a Calvinist anymore. I mean, in any sort of traditional meaning of that word, you're not a Calvinist anymore, right? So, but the cosmology says, if my options are, my will is ultimate or God's will is ultimate, then the folks calling themselves Calvinists say, well, then obviously God's will is ultimate and mine is an illusion. And they think the Arminian is saying my will is ultimate and God's will is an illusion, as if those are the options. That's Sophoclean. That's Stoicism. That's there's all sorts of pagan people that held to that, but it is not a Christian. It's not a Christian view.
Oh, I can hear all the comments in my head right now, because I think what, yeah, I think you're having a bigger conversation, but a lot of people are not really capable of having some of that yet, because all they heard you just say was, did you just call man's will sovereign? Right?
Right,
Because you can't have two sovereigns. So
right.
then what
Because
is man's will?
well, and I think that's where that um, that as soon as you think in that it's a competition, it's a rivalry of wills, you're thinking now sinful man tries to rival God's will with his will, but the reality is it's actually not possible to do that, right? So it's just that's
Yeah, the pool
uh,
ball is never going to uphold the table.
right, yeah, exactly. Um,
I mean,
so
can I use it like that without going too far?
no, I think you can, yeah.
They're not even
So
the same. They're not the same kind of wills,
right,
right?
exactly. They're not the same kind of wills, but can you have two sovereigns? Of course you can. That's actually not. That's never been up for question. Jesus is the
Really?
King of Kings.
Mm,
There you go. You got a
see. There's a
layered
hierarchy.
sovereignties.
There's a hierarchy, though,
There's a
right?
hierarchy, right?
Yeah, so we're not disacknowledging that, but they're sovereigns. So you can have, okay, I got it. So you know what? This is really good. You go to Ephesians and it lays out the hierarchy of sovereigns. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right. So, but hierarchy is actually not possible. This is why Karl Marx's arguments were so convincing, because they know everybody had already bought into this cosmology, and a hierarchy is not possible. A hierarchy of wills, a hierarchy of forces is not possible. A because all forces are in rivalry, because there's there is force, and then there is who has the control of the most of it.
Mm.
And your control of any sort of force is a threat to my control of force, right? So this is why um Kronos ate his children. This is why Zeus had to overthrow the Titans, right?
Yeah, this is why Crips and Bloods fight. There's no
Yeah,
difference. This is
no
nation.
difference.
This is all the same setup.
This is so tribes, nations, neighborhoods, disputes over property lines, all these things, uh, they can go that way really quickly, because we all have this agreed upon cosmology, and so uh, this is why hierarchy is a bad word now, because if you have so uh, if a parent has authority over a child, then it's taking away something from the child, right? You can't have spheres of authority. You can't have layers
Wills
of
are in
authority,
conflict at that point,
right?
right?
Wills are in conflict, um, but this is why when you read, like, for me, the thing that opened me up to this was reading King Arthur stories. That's where I discovered some of this. That's 100%. That's where I discovered all this. Is because you have a world in which you have kings, uh, lords, and the king is over the whole area, the lord is over the smaller area, and um, through a joyful mutual submission, you have peace in these areas where you literally have multiple rulers over the same land, people. And the reason that they could do that is because all of it being received as a gift from Christ, who is the king of all of it. Um, so the so it's not a con you and so you end up with some conflict at times. This is the Magna Carta. This is why the Magna Carta is so important. It's because you've got a group of lords who get together and come to the king and they say, hey, we have an agreed upon way of doing this, and you're not doing it anymore. We wrote it down. We're all going to look at it together, and then we're all going to sign it, right? To say this is how we do this layered authority thing. All right, and constitutional monarchy grew out of that. You had all sorts of layered monarchical authorities before that. You just had it being passed down orally, and they began writing it down as a as a way of making setting expectations properly. But now it's we don't believe you can do that, right? It's you can't have the Holy Roman Empire made it to almost 1900, and we literally don't even know what the Holy Roman Empire is anymore. We don't know what it did. We don't understand it, right? It doesn't, because there's no place in our imagination that the Holy Roman Empire fits. So we automatically think that was some bad, terrible thing, right? But it was a real thing with real authority, with real it. But we don't have I mean, you were asking recently for books, and I sent you one that I'd been reading on the history of the genealogies of the kings of England.
Yeah.
It's it's the complexity of the layers of authority that the world up until 1900 had. 1848 is when it all really fell apart. And so you had some overlap for about 50 years. You had some overlap of the old world and the new world that started in 1848. But the complexity of the of sovereignties, of layered sovereignties that the world used to be able to enjoy. I mean, now we look at a kid and we say, who gets it? The state or the dad? The parent or the president? Who gets that kid? And then you've got some people that are like, well, what about the state? I think the state gets the kid, right? The state of Washington, not the federal government, but the state of Washington gets that kid, right? Those conversations they're pretty pointless at this. I mean, they're not pointless in the moment, but the fact that that's where the debate is just shows that we have been so de-Christianized. Now, who do I think is going to do the best job in this setup of guiding and directing and caring for their kid? I think it's going to be the parent, right? So I think you fight for that. You fight for that for practical consideration, practical reasons. But the fact that that's the question that we're debating shows that that our imagination has been colonized by the enemy.
Do stuff like that. I'm like, what do you mean? Who gets the kid? The parents get the kid. And the reason I would say that is because covenantally, that's the hierarchical structure of things, right? Like, what are we talking about?
But I mean, you're sphere sovereignty guy.
Yeah.
What kid is that? What sphere is that kid born into?
Right. He's born into the sphere of the family.
No, he's born into all of them.
Well, yeah. Technically, you're right. Yeah, you're right. No, that's right. Yeah. But they all have a, how do I say this? That's true. There's a different claim that each one of them have on that child, and a function of authority that they all have on that child. That's really a good point. Some of us act like that. I think some of us would say, well, the church doesn't have a claim on that child. I think you have to be pretty Baptist to say that, though.
Yeah. I mean, because I don't think that I don't know Baptists that would, if you say, well, who's responsible to disciple that kid, the church or
They
the
would say the church
family?
and the family.
They would say, well, that's not, yeah, of course, but everybody is, right? Both of, um,
Yeah.
but who's
They
responsible?
shouldn't be able to say the church.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I think there
Not in a
I'm more than happy to grant them that inconsistency and not questioning, right?
sure, sure.
Because you want the kid disciple. That's the point.
Yeah,
Um,
and they would just say they disciple all people, so that's
yeah,
fine.
right.
I'm saying they
But
would have an obligation to that child in a way that they wouldn't necessarily to everyone else, right? Like there's an immediate obligation to, which is why they do dedications, right? Like there's a
right, yeah. Well, but like some of when we had a baptism this last Sunday, and the congregation stands up and they take their vow to assist these parents in the Christian
sure,
nurture
yeah,
and admonition of this child, which is something that my church takes really seriously, and I love that. And the but one of my favorite things, what um, one thing that I love is seeing kids that when they were tiny, and I took vows to help their parents, because I was in the congregation, and then had different opportunities to interact with these kids when they were little, and then now and then they grow up and they're in your Bible study when they're a teenager maybe, and then now they're married and they're having their own kids, and you're seeing them take vows to the next generation of kids, and you're seeing them disciple like the junior hires in your congregation, and that the interconnectedness of the generations, and God honor God you know rebuilding reality right in front of your eyes. um that's one of my favorite things, sitting around after church and talking to somebody that's in their mid 20s who you've known since they were this big. You or maybe they're 22, right? 23. You can remember their baptism, and you've had different opportunities to speak into their life and be a part of their discipleship, and now you're seeing them discipling younger kids in the church, or they're getting ready to have their own kids, and they're married, and it's amazing to see God's faithfulness from generation to generation, um, within the church. And um, I think unfortunately, I think we move around a lot. We switch churches a lot. We don't have some of that stuff, and it that is the fruit of a historic rather than Gnostic
yeah.
cosmology understanding.
No, you're right. I remember Ben Merkel came and did a conference, I think when we were during COVID in South Dakota. And one of the things that he impressed upon people was to find a place and live there for 40 years, go to church and plant. 40 years. Give yourself there to 40 years. Find a place to give yourself to for 40 years. And when you do that, though, everything is different.
Yeah.
Everything is different. Even in your cosmology changes the way you understand the world, because you start living covenantally and you're like, oh, I get it. Right? You can't escape it. Even people who I think have it wrong, because they're functioning in the way that God made the world, and being consistent, they can't help but that. I think that's part of some of the problem we have in the conversation. Is like you got a lot of faithful Christians who are actually doing the thing, and
Right.
then they're like, they don't understand what you're talking about, because what they're doing and how they think are separate. Right? But they're falling in the function of it, and it's like, this is great. It's like,
Well,
and
I think it's because they're walking in the Spirit,
yeah,
and in a world that doesn't know the Spirit, in a
right, right.
society that doesn't know the Spirit, they're walking in the Spirit. And I think that's actually what faithfulness looks like. But I mean, one of the things, and it's hard because you don't want to make a law out of it, because it isn't that sort of thing, right? People have to move for work. People, God doesn't always grant us all of those things. But when, I mean, Aaron and I were driving home recently from our son was in a play. We were driving home, and she was just saying, things that were so hard 10 in our lives 20 years ago, that were just that they took up everything. They took up all the air in the room, difficulties, pain, that once you get through them, you look back, and now in the from the perspective of them having been solved, they look smaller than they felt at the time. And so, and she said, and as you get older, you start to say, that going into a conflict,
Yep.
right?
That's right.
You know that at the beginning, well, when I get to the other side, I know it feels big, but I know it's going to look smaller
Yeah,
from that
temperament
other
changes.
perspective.
That's right.
And
Yep.
so you start bringing that future by faith into the present,
That's right.
um,
Come on
and
now. That's right.
treating it, according to what it's going to be like. And so it doesn't, it doesn't break your legs in the way that it would have. And she said, how do you help younger people see that? Because what always happened to us was people say, well, you'll see this isn't as big of a deal when you're older. And that didn't help. Right. And so she said, how do you communicate to younger people the truth that once you get through it, you realize, you see it different, because it doesn't feel less all consuming.
I don't think
But
you can help them see it. So I really don't. Maybe, but here's how I've been trying, right? Because when you're in the moment, it's like a fighter. When you're in the moment fighting, you're not observing the fight. Like you said,
Right.
until you become a mature, educated fighter, then you can start observing, like, okay, I know what's going. But the way that I'm learning with my kids, this is why I think it's so good to be a parent who's practicing this stuff. It's kind of like you said with writing. Like every day you get the opportunity. Is I've been telling my kids to think through where they want this thing to be at the end. Like, where do you want this to end at? Right? And this is working with their brothers and sisters. And it's like, so let me ask you a question. Did what you say to your brother or sister, did it contribute to that direction that you were trying to go? Or were you not even thinking about the end and you just said some stuff? And so, because I want them to think, because then that's doing what you said. How do you bring the future into the present? What's the teleos here? Where are we trying to go? What's the end goal? And then think about that and act towards that end. And as you do, you'll realize that whatever the problem, I'm trying to work through this with my kids. And so as they're doing stuff, it's like, okay, when you stole your sister's piece of meat off of her plate, did you want to get smacked in the face? Was that the end goal? Because if that's what you were trying to do, then my brother, you got it. Like you did a good job. Like if you were trying to get your teeth knocked out, you accomplished that, right? So that's really good. So I'm proud of you. But if your intended goal was to become a better blessing to your sister in this way and to have her praise your name everywhere, well, then you got to make better decisions on the front end of this. Because that one didn't do it. So you learn something, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know if you can. Because I know what you're talking about. When we got married, you'll see. It's like, no. I wish somebody would have told me. Write the vision and make it plain, and then act in a way that accomplishes that in faith. Because everything you're doing is a faith move, asking God to bless it towards that end, right? And so now even in conversations, I have to be like, okay, well, this is going to go off the railroads real quick. When I'm in some conversations, I ask people, what do you want? Like, where do you want to be at? Let's just go right to the end real quick. All right, that's where you want to be at? Great. Now we can talk. Right? Yeah.
But I think that before you get that, you actually have to have a positive vision for what you want, where you want your family to go, what you want your life to be like. And this, to bring it full circle, This is one of the things that bothers me about social media is that it's all it's the constant reactionary. But I don't think that's a social media problem. I think it's just revealing, like you said, it's revealing the reality that we live in response. We aren't living with a positive,
Reaction. Yeah.
faith-filled vision for what God is calling us to, building us into, building us to be, or we don't have that positive vision. And so we end up building small um, enclaves of rivalry where we gather into the same cul-de-sac because we don't like what's going on in that cul-de-sac or on the road over there. But um, it's a community based or a gathering based on what we don't like, rather than a consistent positive vision for what God's calling us to be. And the so maybe social media just depresses me because I'm like, really, this is the state we're in. Uh, Whereas if I hang out by myself with my books, I can pretend that it's something different.
Yeah, I think it's like putting a thermometer in the mouth. Oh, we're this hot.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's take that out because before I
We'll
put
take
that
that
in my mouth,
thermometer out. It's easier to take the thermometer out than
it's
try
so
and
much
actually get
easier. It's
better.
like, oh snap! I better get some medicine. That's where we're at. All right.